See you there. Welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're working on pizza. And I've already got the dough prepared. It's in the oven. We'll check it out in a minute. But there's sort of three sets of things that are key to pizza. One is the dough. And there's a lot of different ways of making dough. And everybody disagrees about what is the best dough. So we won't go into that argument. I've got my dough recipe. And that's what I'm going to be working from. Then the next thing is the sauce. And to me, that's where the magic really happens. And that's, frankly, with my pizza, that's the best part of the pizza is my sauce. And I don't have a video for you yet, but it takes me a day and a half or 2 days to make my pizza sauce. And I go straight from the garden into the pot, and I make great big pots of sauce at a time. And you have to cook it for a long time to get it reduced so that it sticks, so that it sort of burbles when it's sitting in the pot and cooking. You don't want it a thin sauce on your pizza. It's just not as yummy. And I use a lot of fresh vegetables and basil and oregano and more basil and lots of tomatoes and onions, and then I simmer it and let it cook down. That's the best part of the pizza. I'll make a video about that this summer when it's time. So the third part is the toppings. And of course there's going to be mozzarella cheese, but you can go anything else on top. And frankly, you don't have to do mozzarella. You can put anything on top of pizza. I've had pizzas with eggs. I've had pizzas with ham, and I don't like those little anchovies, but just about anything else I like on pizza. Pizza's a very versatile food like that. The key is simply try different things and enjoy it. If you're not having fun in the kitchen, then really why are you in there? So one of the things that I'm going to do, and there's all different ways of cooking it too. I'm going to use some basic pans here, and I put a little coat of olive oil on those just to keep it from sticking. And that also helps to crunch up the crust a little bit. Get that oil, it gets hot and sort of sizzles it in there. So let's take a look at our dough and see what we got going on. So I put this dough in the oven, I don't know, about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. And now when I bring it out, it's got this nice texture. And you can put your fingers in it and it sort of leaves imprints there. That's when you know it's risen enough. And you can feel the difference after a while. And I'm over here, when I make my sauce, I freeze it because I don't like adding the acid that you need to have to can. And that's the only way to preserve pizza sauce, is either to freeze it or to can it. Okay, so now back to the dough. I've got the dough in my bowl. I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to scoop it out of there. You really can't hurt the dough at this point. And so if you look at it, it's just this nice, really flexible, moist dough. So what are we going to do with it? Well, I decided there's a couple things that I could do. With this recipe, I used to always make 3 pizzas. So there's enough flour in here when you do the full 6 cups that you can make the dough for 3 sort of thin crusts. But today I'm only going to make 2. I'm going to make a little bit thicker crust. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on these 2 pans, and then I'll put those pans in and let them rise. Another pan that I could use, and if I was making 3, I would use this pizza stone. And the pizza stone is going to make a little bit crispier crust. But not going to use that today. That's all personal preference. So I've got my dough, and I put it into 2 roughly same size balls. And I put it on my flour. I've refloured this. I just sort of coat it in flour a little bit. That makes it easier to work without getting it to stick on my fingers. And this is a messy process. There's just nothing to it. Nothing you can do about it. You're eventually going to have to turn it out. And so I work it on this board. I made this board years ago from scrap wood that I found. And I've been using it for, oh gosh, probably 10, 15 years I've been using this board for all kinds of things. And so I just take out a wooden rolling pin and I just sort of flatten it a little bit one way, flatten a little bit the other way. What I'm trying to do is make it round. And it's this really flexible stuff, so there's a lot of, there's a lot of working that you can do. And what I normally do is I get it about to that, about to that size, and then I like to continue working it with my arms. And this just shows you how flexible it is. Now, I'm not one of the guys that goes into it, does that, but I'm capable of it. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a master pizza maker or dough maker or anything like that, but I've made a fair bit of it. And you want it big enough that it's a little bit bigger than the size of whatever pan you're using. And so I just sort of bring it on there. You don't want there to be any holes in it. So it ends up looking something like that. I'll do the same thing with the other one. And I always come out of this covered in dough, in flour. I don't mind. Really, a good thing to do at this point would be to have a glass of wine, so that in between rolls you can reach over and just sort of get into the mood. But I don't have a glass of wine today. Maybe I'll have to fix that here in the next couple minutes, maybe before the next section. Definitely while I'm eating it, I'll have wine. So we get our dough spread out. And like I said, I'm using a little bit more dough than I could use on this because I want this to be a crustier pizza. I'm going to let it rise a little bit so that it's more like a pan toss than a thin crust. And so I'm going to throw it back in that oven. The oven's not preheated yet. It's still warm from when the dough was rising earlier. So it's still a good place to let that heat hit this and sort of let that dough go into a second rise and add some air to that. So I'll just take and I'll put those in there. I'll give it about 20 minutes to rise, and then we will be ready to start adding our sauces, our cheeses, and whatever else we're going to put on there. Okay, so I had rolled out my pizza dough and I had put it on to my pans, and I let it rise for about 15 minutes. It hasn't risen a lot, but it's risen a little bit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave that in there. I like to start pre-cooking my pizza before I add the sauce on when I'm doing it this way. I'm just going to set it to bake at 450 and let it start preheating for a few minutes. And then I'm going to get everything that I want ready so that I can pull those out of there after they've already started to bake. And you don't have to do it that way. That's just one of the ways that I've come to like doing it. So I've got my sauce here, and this is my homemade sauce, and it's very thick sauce, which is the way that I like it. And I use about 2 ladles of my sauce on each pizza. I've already got my ingredients. I've got a combination of mozzarella and Parmesan cheese. Thank you. Wife's in the other room. We're going to throw some spinach on, and we are going to put some feta on. You can put anything that you want practically on a pizza as long as it isn't a wet ingredient on there. So I'm going to go ahead, and it hasn't been very long, so this pizza probably hasn't really pre-baked, but I'm going to take this one out, and it hasn't had a chance to get hot. This is another way. So just assume this one hasn't pre-baked because it hasn't had any time. The other one will be pre-baking while I'm doing this. So I just take and I put a couple of ladles of my sauce in there. And the goal is to spin it, or to get it distributed across the pizza. I'm actually going to go a little bit more on this. So about 2.5 ladles. And again, everything that you are doing with pizza is to taste. So I'm just going to make sure that this, I like to get my sauce almost to the very edge. Some people like to leave a space where they get that crusty bit that doesn't have any cheese or toppings on it. That's not my preferred way. This is a very saucy pizza, so I'm going to have to make sure to give it plenty of time to cook. It'll end up with that extra sauce, it'll end up with a little bit doughier dough at the end. It won't end up being crispy. So I always like to put cheese down first. Again, this is a matter of taste, and people will argue with you from the time you start talking about pizza about what's the best way of doing things. So the best way of doing things is whatever you decide is best for you. So I like to put my cheese down first, and then I like to put whatever kind of toppings I'm going to use on top of this. Now this is going to be a spinach and feta. So on top of the spinach, I won't do a heavy layer of cheese. If I'm doing a meat or pepperoni or something like that, then what I'll do is I'll put a heavy layer of cheese. But we want to be able to see the feta on here. You could put pita on there too. I'm just going to sprinkle this liberally across here, and that's going to just give it that lovely tangy flavor that you don't normally get. And oh, let's just use it all. I guess you could use too much ingredients if you couldn't get it to cook through, but it's pretty hard to go too far. So you use what you've got. The main thing on my pizzas is I like plenty of cheese. Now I'm not doing a thick layer of cheese on the top like I normally would that would cover up the ingredients if it was mushrooms or something like that. But I am doing a small layer. Now I'm going to put this on the bottom shelf, and that's going to heat up the bottom more than the top. So the top of the oven is going to be hotter, the bottom is going to be cooler. In this case, I haven't preheated that dough, so I'm going to put this on the bottom so that it heats more on the bottom than the top, because the element is at the bottom of the stove. Now, this other pizza pan has had a chance to get hot, and it's already started to make a little change in the color in the dough. I see a little bit of steam coming out of that dough when I put it in, when I take it out of there. So this is already hot. This is one of the dangers of doing it this way, is that you can burn yourself. So don't do that. And I'm just going to take, and again, I'm going to do a couple of, I'm going to put the rest of this on here, because why waste sauce? My sauces are mostly vegetables, and I don't put any kind of preservatives or anything like that in there, because frankly that's not what I want to eat. So an awful lot of tomatoes, awful lot of onions. The amount of oregano and basil that I put in there, especially basil, is almost obscene, because I just really like the flavor that the basil brings to it. And you notice I'm not leaving any of this to be disposed of improperly. And so I'm just going to spread that across the pizza. Now this is just going to be a cheese pizza. Just plain old cheese. And I think I would guess that if pepperoni isn't number one, then just plain cheese is the number one pizza. Because everybody will eat cheese pizza, or almost everybody, unless you're lactose intolerant. And so if you want to make sure you can't go wrong, if you order just cheese pizza, most people are going to be able to eat that. So I've still got quite a bit of cheese, and like I said, I like a lot of cheese on my pizza. The crust it's nice, but really it's that sauce and those toppings that we're going for. And so I just sort of sprinkle from on high, and I try to get it as close to that edge. So normally I end up having, I don't know how well you can see it, sort of a layer of red, then a layer of white, and then outside of that is just a thin crust. I don't like to leave a real thick area. I've got a lot of cheese here because I only did 2, but you know what? The best way to deal with that problem is put it all on there. So now this is already preheated on the bottom. It's already started heating up. So I'm going to put this pizza on the top shelf, and then we take advantage because the top of the oven is a lot hotter than the bottom, but the source of the heat is on the bottom. So now we've got 2 pizzas cooking in there, and they should come out just about the same time. I guess the one on the bottom is going to come out a little bit sooner, but don't know when they're ready to come out. I figure probably about 20 minutes before you start looking at it. Again, different people like their crust different way. If you want it to be crispier, you leave it in longer. If you want it to be more like a New York pizza where you can fold it, then you don't put it in for quite as long. So the rest of this, the toppings and the way that you finish cooking this, the main key is you don't want it doughy. You want it to finish cooking. You want it to be a bread, not a dough that you're eating it on. And then so the rest after that. And what I do is I like to take a fork and I sort of lift up underneath that crust, and then I run that fork across the crust, and you can hear by the sound of it after you've done it a couple times when you're starting to get a crispy crust. And that's one of those things you just have to do a few times in order to get a hang of it. So for now, I'm going to let this finish cooking, then we'll come back and see what we got. Alright, so we're going to check in on our pizzas now. I'm going to grab my hot pot holders and my fork here. I'm going to open this up. Make sure your face is back, it's hot in there. I've already switched them. I switched the top and the bottom pizzas to sort of even out the heat from the top and the bottom. The bottom one's not quite done yet, so I'm going to let that stay in there. And the top one, don't know if you can hear that. You can sort of hear the fork straight across it. So I'm going to leave that one in there. I'm going to take this one over. And then I get a pizza knife, and there's a lot of things that don't have rules with pizza, but it's important, if you don't want to look like a barbarian, to realize that this is a pizza knife, not a pizza saw. So you don't saw the pizza, you cut the pizza. One single cut from edge to edge. Otherwise, people will be impressed by you making this pizza, and then they'll get to the point where they see you cut it and it's like, oh, that guy or girl is pure amateur, doesn't even know how to use a knife. So that's the most important thing. Not really, but it's a debate in our house, and so I figured I would get that in. So now I'm going to let this sit and cool because otherwise you burn the roof of your mouth. I'm going to go ahead and take the other one out, and we will have ourselves a nice pizza dinner. Thank you for putting up with Doc T. I'll see you next time.